What's up? I'm Omani Najee, and welcome to the SEERs site, a site for seers. Just sit back, relax, and let's see. Hello and welcome to SEERs. I'm your host, Omani Najee. And in the episode, we back to the way walk, and I'll not have to see how to see the lessons that you see. First review, I'll do an exercise to give you with the word to look yourself, you're while naked and sleep that I love you. It's wild, it was us, but let's dive into some signs and with that, let's dive into some signs and some types of actual seeing. We'll get into the clair gifts, into the empathic gifts, telepathic type, sights and all, things like that. And we will begin to name what these truths are. Now, I'm not saying that we need a name or a title or a label for these ways of seeing. For me, however, it helped me to have an establishment point, a foundation that I could tether from, that I could ground from. And this is very important for seers. It gave me a place to ground from so I could take steps into other places. So we'll start naming them here and going through all the clairs. So first, a very simple and sacred question. Are you a seer? Are you a seer? Not saying you need to be a seer to be here. But for those who feel they're seers, that may be seers, ask yourself, because nobody knows you better than you, are you a seer? And even with that, some of you may not realize you are seers without outside assistance. How do you know you're a seer? For instance, when I first met my second wife and we were just friends, I went from San Diego to LA so that we could, party for the weekend and, to meet her family during that weekend. Once I got to LA, she met me at a place so that I could follow her to her home in Los Angeles. So once we met up, she wanted to stop at a carnival that was being held at a park. So we go to this park, it's got rides, it's got foods, and it's got a palm reader. And we decide, what the hell? Let's have a palm reading. So we go in there. Palm reader reads my palms, gives me a reading, reads hers, gives her a reading. And I thought, this palm reader is absolutely full of shit. Absolutely. Because in my reading, she literally told me, I see that you are having family problems in which your ex-wife is not allowing you to see the children, and you're having a lot of issues in court. And by this time, my friend knew my story. And I looked at the palm reader and said, no, I actually have full physical and full legal custody of both my kids. And I'm done with court. And I had to put her in, I thought, put her in a place. Nah, that was completely off base. Then she gave a reading to my friend. And once that was done, I walked away thinking, absolute horseshit. So we get to her home, and on their property, it's a family property, there are two houses, one in the front, one in the back. My friend lives in the back with her mother, and in the front house are where her grandparents lived, her grandmother and grandfather. I had no inkling of meeting them. So we go to her portion of the house to meet her mom, who lives there, but she wasn't there. And so my friend says, oh, maybe she's in the front house at my grandparents'. Let's go over there. I'm like, okay. And between the houses, it might have been 75 feet. In that 75 feet, my friend tells me, just to let you know, my grandmother may not allow you inside her house. She does not allow a lot of people inside of her house. I'm a cop. I understand that. I don't just let people fly into my home whenever they want. So we walk up the steps to the back porch to a screen door with the inner door open. You can hear and see everything that's going on inside. And although my friend typically just walks into her grandmother's house, because she had a guest, she yelled, "Wela, wela." So her grandmother comes to the door. When she does, she and I lock eyes immediately. And my friend starts to introduce me to her grandmother in Spanish. Being in Southern California, I am used to the Mexican dialect of Spanish. My dentist was in Tijuana. I would go to bullfights. I used to hang around in Tijuana all the time because I lived about 7 miles from the border. So that's where I would go all the time. So I'm used to that dialect. So this girl and her grandmother start speaking Spanish in a way that I was like, what the hell? Because it was so fast. And so my friend has a look on her face and says, my grandmother said, you can come in. I'm like, okay. And as her grandmother's opening the door, she continues, my grandmother says that you see things, that you are a seer. Now keep in mind, we just came from a palm reader that I determined was absolute horseshit. And here we are, maybe 10, 15 minutes later, she lived that close. And I have this woman, elderly woman I've never met, speaking in a Spanish I can't follow, telling me that I am a seer. And it completely caught me off guard, although it resonated with me somehow. So we go into the house. We have a seat. I'm sitting beside my friend. Her grandmother's on the other side of the living room. And they are just blowing it up, having this conversation in Espanol de Boricua, you know. And I mean, for me, it was like a tennis match because I'm like, just... And they are just... It was beautiful. It was like a beautiful dance. So my friend turns to me and starts interpreting what her grandmother is telling her about me. And basically, her grandmother is giving me a psychic reading out of nowhere from just looking into my eyes. I will say this about her grandmother. One of the greater sadnesses in my life is I never had a grandmother. I was never blessed with a grandmother. They both passed before I was even a thought. And so I never had a grandmother. This woman from Arecibo, Puerto Rico, for all intents and purposes, this woman became my grandmother. She accepted me in the first time she saw me and then loved me just throughout the entire relationship. But I said all that to say this. You may not even know or recognize yourself or within yourself that you are a seer. Here are some hints, some signs. Do you feel things very deeply, but can't explain it? Do you know things before they happen? people just come up and tell you their secret? Are you somehow aware that there's more than what meets the eye? Are you one of those that says, well, something told me to do this, or something told me to do that? This was the case with my mother. Do you see spirits? Do you see auras or energy? Do you feel vibration? And the list can go on and on. If that is the case, you're in the right spot. You are a seer. There's your sign. So, what is a seer? Let's clamp it down. In a nutshell, a seer is one who sees beyond the surface. What is the surface? For me, the surface is anything beyond the 5 tangible senses. Sight, smell, that type. That's what a seer is. But we'll break down the different aspects of what seeing is. There's the clairvoyant, which is clear seeing, where you see visions of past, present, future, places you've never been to, things that other people don't see. I would put mediums and those who see prophecies clearly as clairvoyance. That's how my visions come. They are dead clear. They're bothersome, but they're very clear. And I will eventually share many of the visions that I've been gifted. There's a clairaudience, a clear hearing. Those are the people who hear things that other people cannot or may not hear. Some may hear voices of those who have crossed over to the other side and things like that. They may hear music where others don't hear music. Apparently there are composers who are like this. There's the empath, and now I've seen the label clair-empath. But these are those that absorb emotional energies. I simply call them empath, but those are the people who feel emotions as though they were their own. And we will definitely get into what an empath is. That will be the next episode, in fact, simply because I believe being an empath is the foundation that most seers have sprouted from, the soil we have sprouted from. I'm not saying all seers are empaths. I don't know all seers. I can say all seers I've met are empaths. So, but then there's also the clairsentient, those who feel deeply emotions and energies. There's a claircognizant, the intuitive, that clear knowing, you just know things. When I was a child and my mom would have some of her church friends over and they'd have their stories while I'm at the table, doing homework or something. And I just break out and tell this person, this adult woman, something I wasn't supposed to know. And a lot of times they look around, how do you know? Cognizant, you know things without being told. There's a clairgustance, that is clear tasting. I have absolutely no experience with this. I've met nobody that carries this trait. I know what it is. You taste things, I guess, that you're not supposed to taste. It's the same with some of the other gifts I just don't have a reference to. So I could not tell you what clairgustance of an experience of clairgustance in my experience. When it comes to these seers, some are dream walkers. spirit walkers, soul readers, mediums, scryers, weavers, oracles, prophets, witches, warlocks. And I know the witches and warlocks gets a lot of bad press because of the ignorance of particular beliefs. But it's not an evil thing. It's a nature thing. And many seers are nature-based that I've met. Some seers see through different lenses like numbers and animals and art and symbols. Some seers have one talent. Some seers have many. It comes to that parable in the Bible where one have one talent, one may have 5, one may have 10. The secret in the parable is use what you have. Use what you have so that you don't lose that ability. And we'll definitely get into the losing the abilities and regaining those abilities. You never lose them. You just cloud them for the most part. At least that's been my experience. Some seers use tools, whether they be pendulums, crystals, tarot cards, elements, earth, wind, fire, feathers, different implements. I used to have an issue with tarot being raised in religion and thinking that these things were evil. When I first met my current wife and we were just friends, she took me to see what is called a santero to get a reading. And at the time, I wasn't looking for anything. I wasn't religious anymore, and I wasn't seeking any other direction. I was just on a flat line, just lost my career, Anywho's, she takes me to go see this guy, this santero. And this guy's name is Frank. Our appointment is 10:30 in the morning, and it's on my birthday. Actually, on my birthday. We get there 10:30. He's not there. The only person at this botanica is his assistant. And we talk to her, just having conversation. Me, my friend, and this assistant to this santero. Y'all, do you know this man walks in at 1:30 in the afternoon? I'm a timely person. I'm kind of pissed off at this time. So this guy walks in, and when he does, he looks at me directly, not at his assistant, not at my friend, but directly at me, and he freezes. Picks up some things, says hi to his assistant, and then walks to the back of the botanic. About 5 minutes later, he calls me back into this small little office where he has a stack of tarot cards. And he's got a bowl of bones and something called Ifa. I didn't know what that was at the time. But it's another lens that seers use to see through. This man asked me my name and my birthday, and then he throws these tarot cards and proceeds to rip a beautiful hole through my soul. Later, he apologizes for being so late, but he tells me, the reason I froze when I saw you is because I had a dream about you. And then proceeds to tell me about this dream. From the time I met him in April and my birthday to January of the next year when he suddenly passed, I would spend 2 to 3 days a week with him at his botanica, at least 5 to 6 hours each. And he would just teach me, man. He would just teach me. But this started from a man who is using tarot. And let me just put this out there. All these people who use these implements, they are seers. Aside from these implements are merely tools like a magnifying glass or a microscope where they can delve into you very deeply. And this Santero did just that with the tarot, the Ifa, and these other bones that he was familiar with. So I say this, that there are tools that seers use to see through that are not evil. They've just been categorized that way. Now, who are the seers and where are they? Easiest answer, everywhere. Every race, every culture, every creed, every lifestyle, every country, every tribe. I seriously doubt if you have gone through any portion of your life without brushing up against a seer if you are not that seer. If you are watching this and you're not a seer, you know seers. They're in your family. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. We are everywhere. Everywhere. And one thing I will do during this entire podcast, I have met seers from different cultures in different countries that speak different languages. And I will give honorable mention to these cultures, particularly in the atmosphere we're in of division, this atmosphere of division. Because these cultures that many speak out against have enriched my soul. Whether you're black, red, white, from Mexico, Peruvian, Colombian, Puerto Rican, Cuban. And I will bring this up continuously throughout this because I love these people, I love these cultures. And also because they're familiar to the soul. We'll get into that. When do seers see? The best analogy I can give is seeing is like a doorway. Sometimes the seer at will can open the door into the other side. Some people crack it and can't get any further. And there's some seers who they can just swing wide open. Then there are some where the door is kicked open from the other side and you have no choice in the matter. That's how my experience has felt most of the time. Because it seems to always be inconvenient for me. For instance, spirit guides. Spirit guides bother me all the time. And I'm the type, I argue with them. Me and my wife were in New Orleans right after COVID, sitting at a beautiful restaurant, eating this beautiful, delicious food when this family of women came in. An older black woman, a younger black woman, and two little black girls. And right off, I just determined it was a grandmother, her daughter, and her two granddaughters. And as soon as they sat down, the spirit guide of the youngest one came a-bugging. And I was sitting about 2 or 3 tables over. But the spirit guide wanted me to give the little girl a message. Mindset. How does it look? A grown man walking to a table of women to tell them that something from the other side wants them to hear something. Now you know I hide this shit all the time. So I'm arguing with the spirit guide like, hells to the no. Of course they don't leave. They don't leave me alone at least. And so I made a bargain. All right, if they are still here when we leave, I'll do it. To which I was like, yeah, I'm gonna eat slow, homie. I'm gonna eat very slow. By this time, my wife sees the look on my face. She's like, uh-oh, what's going on? Where are you? By this time, she is used to this shit. And so she basically says, you might as well go do it now. They're not going to leave you alone. And I fought with it for a few more minutes, like 10, 15 minutes, just to get some respite. I get up, I go to the table and I say, excuse me, ladies, how are you? My name is Omani Najee. This is my wife. And they're like, hi, they were friendly. I know this is going to sound weird, but I speak to spirits. And there's a spirit guide to this young lady that wants me to pass along a message. I know that sounds strange, but may I? And to my shock, they were all for it, which is not customary. Again, I've had to hide this shit. So I delivered the message to this 9-year-old little girl, and the message was basic. I simply asked her, do you sing? And the whole the face of everybody at the table lit up like, how do you know? They didn't say that. That's what it felt like in their faces. And the little girl says, yeah. And I tell her, your ancestor wanted me to tell you never give that up. And I could feel a sense of relief around the table. I don't know their story. It is not up, I believe, it is not up to the seer to see the results of a delivered message. The mailman is not kicking it in your house while you're opening the mail they delivered. And I'm the shy, introverted type that once I do give a reading, I try and bolt very quickly. And since me and my wife had just paid the bill and we're done eating, that was my intention. Tell this beautiful little girl and then bolt, which I kind of did. But as we were leaving, you can hear their thank yous, you can see their faces, and that there was some type of relief in them. Again, I don't know their story, but it brings me to the why do seers see? And after going through a life of why me, why me? This is the question that I felt I need to get to the most. Why do I see? Why do seers see? And in a word, medicine. That's it, medicine. And I'm not speaking of prescription medicines, over-the-counter medicines, or medicines that anyone can deliver to you for your intake. I am speaking of your medicine. The best way to describe medicine is that unique dynamic that is a resident within each person, that when it is used properly, it helps, it heals their spirit, even if for a moment. But that's the answer, the only answer I could come up with. And not just for me, but it seems if you ever see other seers use their abilities to heal people, it's also healing for us. Even though I run from it, it does also heal me mentally in a lot of ways. Because in some situations where I'm thinking my shit's way off base, that person's reaction, the joy they have, or the healing they have, with the smile that broadens their face, does little healing of the things that I chipped away in my own mindset. And so for me, that's the why, so that we can heal, so that we can advise. Seers, oracles. Ignorance has taught us that these things are silent. It's not. We are here. But also remember this. Medicine, your sights, is natural. It's just a different spectrum than the tangible 5 senses. Being a seer is as old as humanity. Which brings us to, how do seers see? There is no one way. You know, I wear these thick glasses. When my parents wore thick glasses, they were called bifocals, and they had a line here. These are called progressives. They do the exact same thing, but they don't have a line. That's how I see. I walk in both worlds, it seems, just as a natural aspect of life. But sight is it's like optometry. An optometrist can see 100 people and give more than 100 different prescriptions. Each person's prescription is different. This journey is finding your prescription. How do you see? There is no one way. I can try and explain how visions happen. I can try and explain how dream interpretations happen. For instance, past life visions. When I look into someone's eyes, I see movies. Literally see reels. And this has happened all my life. And although I didn't understand it, it took many years later. What I was seeing was past lives of that person. And so everybody is going to see in different ways. Sometimes visions will just, say I'm watching TV or reading a book or outside in nature. Sometimes visions will just, boom, come out and I'm watching a movie. I have an Oculus Quest VR game. And it's like being in that reality sometimes where you're surrounded by fixtures that aren't there, that aren't tangible. So there are going to be different ways that people see different things. When my mother sees spirits, it's much different than how I perceive spirits. And so it's all about each person's individual perceptions. And again, this is part of your journey to find out how you best see. How do you remember to see? And at the end of this episode, I will give you an exercise that will help you to determine if you're a seer and how you see. A very easy one, though a very reflective one. I'd also like to talk about the ethics, though, of seeing. I am not here to tell you how to use your gifts, but just know that karma can be a beauty or a bitch, and that is up to you. That's what free will is. So though I'm not telling you how to use your sight, I would simply caution, choose wisely how you use it. So, with all that, are you a seer? Do you feel that you are a seer? Does any of this resonate or sound familiar? And again, you don't need to have a title or label to be a seer. This is simply, particularly for those who are beginning this process, a grounding method. And know this, for all the seers I have met, including myself, grounding is the most healthy exercise for seers. So when I say grounding with labels, I mean something different than grounding, but at the same time, they do have the same effect if you're new to this. Just remember, this is about remembering that you're a seer and how you see, remembering your way of seeing. And just remember, this is natural. It's natural. And so I'll give you this exercise. Simply remember when you were a child, before the curtains of society may have been thrown over some of you. Because for the most part, this is something you were born with. And not just born with, but inherited. Again, I hid this most of my life. It wasn't until 10 years ago when my mom broke down and just told me, yes, she sees things, but it's always been fearful for her. And it was the first time she'd ever told me that her mother was a seer. And so just remember as a child. Now, I'm not saying all of your abilities developed when you were a child, but if you are a seer, more than likely, it was evident as a child. So simply remember your childhood. In our next episode, we'll start to explore these different traits, and we're going to start with the empath. Because again, it is the soil from which all the other abilities seem to sprout from, and how to survive in both worlds. Being an empath is an ocean of emotion, and it's draining. So we'll get into that in our next episode. Until then, my beloveds, think deeply, see clearly, and journey well.